For many years, many people thought that the ancient Paionian city of Bylazora was located in Veles. In, let's call it, popular scholarship, the belief was spawned by the idea that the name Bylazora was somehow supposed to have morphed into the name Veles, a linguistic impossibility. But even prominent scholars like Hammond, Walbank, and Arrington were of the opinion that Bylazora was to be found at Veles, although each of them added verbal qualifiers to their statements, realizing that no real hard evidence suggested such an identification.
In the early 1970s, Ivan Mikulčić made a walking survey of the Ovčepolje region of the Republic of Macedonia, then a part of Yugoslavia. He made note of the Roman and pre-Roman sites and took measurements of 50 pre-Roman sites. The German abstract to his article of 1976 is reprinted in TFAHR's Bylazora publication, Volume 1. Mikulčić noted that the largest of these pre-Roman sites was the one next to the village of Kneža. This site was 19.6 hectares in size. The pre-Roman site near Veles is slightly under 4 hectares. Mikulčić noted, because of its location, the city near Kneža could control almost all the paths which lead from Dardanian territory into northern Paionia. At the same time, the city would be the hub of economic activity in the region. Not only the site's size, but its location, overlooking the valleys leading from Dardania through Paionia into Macedonia, made it a better candidate for being ancient Bylazora than did Veles, and he cited then the evidence of Polybius.
Subsequent to the survey, Ivan and Gorica Mikulčić excavated several soundings on this hill near Kneža and found abundant evidence of a pre-Roman fortified city. The scholarly world was starting to change its mind. Perhaps the city which Polybius and Livy referred to as Bylazora was not, after all, located at Veles, but at the site suggested by Mikulčić in his article. It is to these two ancient authors that we now turn. In the extant corpus of ancient Greek and Latin works, Bylazora is mentioned only twice, once by the ancient Greek author Polybius and once by the ancient Roman author Livy. We analyzed both of these passages in depth in Volume 3 of our publication on Bylazora. Both authors give valuable evidence about the location of Bylazora and clues to the lifespan of Bylazora.
Polybius was a contemporary and eyewitness to the events that led to Rome's destruction of Macedonia and conquest of Greece. He was alive when Philip V conquered and fortified Bylazora and when the Romans defeated and captured Perseus. This is the pertinent passage in Polybius. Let's analyze it line by line. Philip the king conquered Bylazora. Literally it reads, Philip took Bylazora for himself. Polybius then describes Bylazora as being the largest city of Paionia. Such a description implies two things. One, that there are other cities in Paionia at the time, and two, that Bylazora in particular, and Paionia in general, are not wastelands devoid of cities, as some of our colleagues have maintained. And lying extremely well placed pros tas espolas from Dardania into Macedonia. The difficulty here is in the words tas espolas. Traditionally, tas espolas has been translated as the pass. This unfortunate and incorrect translation has given rise to the idea that ancient Bylazora commanded a pass or a narrow defile, a long narrow defile as one scholar puts it, through which the Dardanians had to march on their way to raid Macedonia. And this idea has led many to suggest that the location of Veles suitably fits this description, whereas the site at Kneža, which we are excavating, does not.
Let's look more closely at this phrase, tas espolas. First, tas espolas is plural, not singular. It comes from the word he espole, a noun based on the verb which means to throw into. This word has been used by Herodotus to mean an invasion, or an incursion, or a migration, or an inroad. By Thucydides to mean a pass. By Herodotus again to mean the mouth of a river. And by Antiphanes for a prologue or preface to a literary work. So even were we to translate tas espolas along the lines of it being some sort of geographical feature, it would be translated as the passes, or the inroads. The site at Kneža, which we are excavating, has a commanding view, especially to the north, of the valleys of Paionia that connected Dardania to Macedonia. It is a site well located to staunch the invasions of the Dardanians into Macedonia. And that brings us to the next point concerning tas espolas. The more common usage of tas espolas is in its sense of an invasion or an incursion or a migration. And such a translation would fit this passage admirably, or at least certainly as well as the inroads or the passes. Moreover, in just a few words further on, Polybius will use not tas espolas, but ton esodon when he wants to refer to the inroads, in the sense of a physical feature. Ton esodon literally means the roads into.
So Polybius continues, "It was not easy for them, that is the Dardanians, to invade into Macedonia with Philip holding the inroads, ton esodon. These inroads are described as being through or by the aforementioned city being, of course, Bylazora. Before moving on to other matters, Polybius states that Philip fortified this, Tauton. Many take the word Tauton to refer to the passes or the inroads, but Tauton is a feminine singular and as such cannot refer to a plural. There is only one thing that Tauton can refer to, and that is the aforementioned city, Bylazora."
So in summary, we propose this translation. Philip the king conquered Bylazora, it being the largest city of Paionia, and lying extremely well placed against the incursions from Dardania into Macedonia. Because of this deed, that is the conquest of Bylazora, he, Philip, was nearly completely freed of fear of the Dardanians. For it was not easy for them, the Dardanians, to invade Macedonia with Philip holding the inroads, which ran through or by the aforementioned city, Bylazora, and so fortifying this, meaning the city of Bylazora. In summary then, Polybius affirms that Bylazora was the largest of the Paionian cities, and that it was indeed inhabited and intact when Philip V conquered it in 217 BC. Let's move on to Livy.
This is a pertinent passage in Livy. The passage has often been cited to argue that Bylazora is located on the Axius, or Vardar River, but a careful translation shows that this is not the case at all. He, Perseus, advanced as far as the city of Almana and pitched camp on the banks of the Axius River. Around Desudaba in Mytica, the army of the Gauls was stationed, waiting for the promised pay. He, Perseus, sent Antigonus, one of the noblemen, who ordered the throng of Gauls to move camp to Bylazora, it is located in Paionia, and the assembled princes to come to him. They, the Gauls, were 75 miles away from the Axius River and the king's camp.
The passage says that Perseus is at the city of Almana, a site not yet identified, on the banks of the Axius, or Vardar River. The Gauls are 75 miles away from the Axius River and the king's camp. Perseus orders the rank and file of the Gauls to go to the city of Bylazora in Paionia, and the Gallic princes to come to him at Almana. Livy does not say that Bylazora is located on the banks of the Axius River. In any case, the proposed alliance between Perseus and the Gauls falls apart, and the Gauls never do go to Bylazora. But there is another more important point to this passage. There must have been some good reason why Perseus would have ordered the rank and file of the Gallic army to go to Bylazora. He would not have ordered them to go there if the city was a desolate ruin. Bylazora must still have been a fortified garrison post, and there must have been sufficient provisions to feed the army. The passage from Livy is the last we hear of Bylazora in the ancient sources, but it definitely suggests that Bylazora, on the eve of Perseus's defeat, was still a living city. There's one odd thing about Livy's description of Bylazora. He does not, like Polybius, say that Bylazora is the largest city of the Paionians. He says simply that it is located in Paionia, or the Latin may be translated as, it is a place in Paionia. Livy wrote in the Augustan era. Might it be that by the time of Augustus, Bylazora had in fact been destroyed and no longer existed, its existence just a faded memory?
Although this passage from Livy is the last we hear of Bylazora in the ancient sources, we can fix a terminus ante quem for Bylazora's destruction, abandonment, and dismantling. When Ptolemy wrote his geography, he listed the cities of Macedonia and Paionia. Bylazora was not amongst them. The general consensus of scholarly opinion is that Ptolemy's geography was written sometime between 130 and 135 AD. So, Bylazora, once the largest city of Paionia, according to Polybius, must have been destroyed, abandoned, and forgotten before that date. By the time of Diocletian's Edict of Prices in 301 AD, even the name of Paeonia seems to have fallen out of use. When listing the province of the Moesias, the edict lists, amongst others, Dardania and Macedonia, but not Paeonia.
We will have more to say about the actual destruction of Bylazora in one of our later videos.